Hi everyone. To wrap up this series on the outdoor kitchen build, what I'd like to do is a couple of retrospectives. In the first one today, I want to talk to you about the Braaimaster Braai. I've had the Braaimaster Braai now for 6 months. I've been really happy with it. So I'd like to share some of those experiences with you. So we'll take the camera outside, we'll open up the braai, we'll light the fire, and we'll have a bit of a chat about technique, some of the equipment you may need, and the Dutch-made Braaimaster in general. So that piece that I just removed there, I call it the firebox. It's the area in which the wood burns. It's a big steel box that sits right in the middle of the braai, right in the middle of the barbecue. You pile your wood in it, coals fall through the bottom, you move the coals to the side, and you cook your food. It weighs a good 10 kilos. You can see the open bottom, so the wood gets put in the top, piles up, burns, and then the coals, when they're ready, they fall through, with a little bit of encouragement from the user from time to time. But in general, that's the principle. You light the fire in this box, let the coals fall through, cook on the coals. If you want to keep the fire going, you keep feeding it. If you've decided you've had enough of cooking and you just want to use some scrap wood just to keep things warm, you can start to do that. I tend not to cook on the scrap wood, I tend to cook on my good wood, my ash. We'll go through that in a moment, but this is the principle. Firebox, fire, coals, heat, good meat. Let's light the fire. So as I just said, guys, the firebox goes right in the middle. And this braai, I have the option to move it over on the side, which would allow me more space to cook on some sort of cast iron pot that you can hang from the brackets on the edge. I don't have one of those yet, for now. I have that in the middle, and I put the cooking grates either side. I tend to cook things like chickens at this level, where they take 35-40 minutes and we don't want the skin or the meat to burn. I tend to cook steaks, sausages, chicken wings, prawns, things like that, hamburgers at this level. A bit closer to the coals, a bit faster, get some caramelization, beautiful flavor. Alright, let's talk a little about my technique for lighting the fire. I put 2 pieces of flat wood in the bottom of the firebox. I then use fire lighters, usually 2 in 2 pieces like that, and I stack the wood on top, up against the walls of the firebox. Then I use some sort of blowtorch to light it usually. Let's go ahead and do that. In general, to get it going, I use around about this much wood. Some smaller ones, some middle-sized ones, and a couple of larger ones across the back. Usually put a nice big chunk. Today's a bit of a windier day, so I imagine this will get going quite well. It's the little teepee effect. It seems to work quite well. Gets a good draft from below and comes up. And then I usually put one in the back. It locks everything in place. And then if I really want to get things going quickly, I can add a couple more above that one. Let's do that for today. Off we go. I tell you, it's so nice to sit here with that wood smoke. While that's getting going, let's just have a bit of a chat about other things. Let's first talk about the Braaimaster itself. So my Braaimaster is made out of Corten steel, which after time develops this beautiful rusty red colour. That's happened just because it's been raining, and that provides a level of protection. It's virtually maintenance free. I'm not aware that I need to carry out any maintenance tasks on it really, other than keeping it basically clean. When we unpacked it, as you might have seen in the earlier video, it was all very shiny before it developed this nice oxidation effect. That gave us an opportunity to really see the welds. The welds are fantastic. The way that they've been done and finished, really good quality of craftsmanship with this particular barbecue. When you are doing your assembly, make sure the base is level before you put the furnace unit on top. Make sure the ground can support 200 kilos and the thing's not going to shift and subside over time. Make sure you're putting it down on a good, strong, firm foundation. 200 kilos is quite a lot of weight. The unit itself is not quite up around 200, but by the time you pile a whole lot of wood underneath it, it's getting up there. How much wood do you need? You've seen me light it, and that usually gets the fire going quite well, as you can see behind me. It's coming along well. I'll have to feed it again in a moment. If I was going to cook 2 burgers now, I need something like this to feed it again. A couple of logs in a moment, then the coals will start to develop. The pieces that I put at the bottom will eventually burn through and let the coals fall out, and everything then works out really nicely, I've found over time. If I'm doing chicken, where the cooking time is not just 6 or 8 minutes, but the chicken, has been spatchcocked, laid open, and that cooking takes 35, 40, possibly 45 minutes, then I probably need twice as much wood. If I'm doing 2 chickens, I'll need roughly half as much again. What type of wood to use? I use ash. There are several different types. I've chosen this purely because I already had it, because we have a fireplace in the house. It's very easy to split, it's got a straight grain, and it burns very nicely. I've found it perfect, to be honest with you. The coals that are generated are plenty hot enough. I've been quite lucky. I've been to South Africa quite a few times, and they have particular species of hardwoods that grow there, that the coals generated in the braais are really very hot. You can get that here in the Netherlands or in Europe in general, but I think this is fine. I haven't tried oak, which is also readily available, but the ash works beautifully. It's easy to split, relatively inexpensive, can be bought in bulk or in small packages from the hardware store, and in terms of the coals that you need for cooking, perfect temperature and a good cooking duration, and I think that's really the important thing. If you're trying to cook, as I said, some chickens for 35 or 40 minutes, you want those coals to stick. You don't want to have to keep bringing coals down from above, otherwise you go through really a lot of lumber. So for me, ash has been perfect. I have to admit I haven't tried any of the others. There may be better ones out there, but if you have some ash or it's easy to get, whatever, then it's perfect. In terms of using this as a heating source, as you can see, the firebox behind me is really at my shoulder height, and it's quite pleasant sitting here, feeling that warmth on my back. I can sit here with friends, having a barbecue. We can sit here in the evenings, reading a book, or enjoying a glass of wine, whatever. I've started to use offcuts from my workshop to use just as a heating source. I burn the ash when I'm cooking, and I use offcuts of pine, fir, whatever I have, except for treated woods and melamine, of course, in the fire when I'm just sitting here using it as a heating source, just to save some on ash and save throwing away the scraps from the shed. Can you smoke on it? The answer is yes, you can. It's not a smoker where you can do low and slow and cook a brisket for 12 hours, but you can put a fresh piece of wood on the coals, say some cherry or some apple, something that gives a nice smoky flavour to the meat. You can put a fresh piece of wood on the coals and get a nice smoky flavour through your cooking. There are one or two items that I think are really essential when using this braai. A magnetic timer. Why magnetic? I can stick it under the braai, it's always close by. A timer is essential really. Meat has a certain amount of cooking time. It comes with experience, but you know a burger's going to take roughly 6 minutes. You can use this and be fairly clear that you're going to get a nice medium rare burger. Some sort of cooking thermometer is really essential with all barbecuing. Anyone who takes barbecuing seriously has at least one of these. If you're going to do a steak, measuring, or chicken, very important with poultry of course. Anyone who's going to take barbecue seriously is going to have some sort of way of measuring the internal temperatures of the meat. Essential. This thing gets really, really, really hot. If I'm cooking over time, some chickens, the coals build up, the radiant heat that comes from the metal as the heat builds up in there is really very, very high. Some sort of protection for your hands to save losing all the hairs on the back of your hands is really important. It really hurts. Good chopping boards are essential for taking the backbones out of chickens, as are good shears. I really suggest, chickens cook so well on this thing. If you take the backbone out of it, flatten it out, spatchcock it, flatten it out, put it on the coals, let it sit for 35-40 minutes, wait until the internal temperatures get to the right place so that you can eat it safely. You're going to have a beautiful meal. The other piece of equipment that I really recommend you buy is a cooking grate, such as this. These are actually from South Africa. I've been there a few times this year for work and I was lucky enough to be able to pick a couple of these up at their Pick and Pay supermarket and bring them back as hand luggage. And they open. So when you spatchcock your chicken, you can lay it in there and it will actually take two side by side. Then as you cook, it's a very simple matter of turning the whole chicken over. Also fantastic for fish. Boerewors, the South African sausage, is a big coiled sausage which also fits very nicely in here. I've seen South Africans use it for pretty much everything. I tend to use the cooking grates that came with the barbecue for most things except chickens, which I put in one of these. So what I tend to do with chickens is have one of the cooking grates set lower, one higher. I sort of caramelize the skin a little on the lower side and then move it to the high side, flipping it over. Then I change the grill height on the low side, move it up, and then I just go back and forth. Because the side of the chicken that's facing the heat box in the middle is getting more heat than the side that's facing the outside. So it's good to alternate from side to side as you're cooking something over a longer time. These come in two different types. There's one that's a bit more like a box, which is handier for chicken. And there's the other one that I showed you just now, which is more like an envelope. It doesn't have quite the same thickness or depth. This would be great for fish or boerewors, the South African sausage, or even just steaks. If you don't want to get your hands in there and burn your fingers, as I said before, if you don't have a good oven mitt, you could just use one of these. It has a nice long handle, keeps your hands away from the heat, and you can flip and flip very easily, as well as getting access to the meat through the grate to measure those internal temperatures.